All right, let's take a look at section 5. Here is that focus question. Religion was central to 18th century colonial American life. Bibles and other religious publications were the largest category of printed matter, and religious disputes often garnered more attention than political issues. By the 1720s and 1730s, however, many ministers feared that westward expansion, a lack of individual engagement in church activities, and the growth of commerce and Enlightenment rationalism threatened religious devotion. These fears helped inspire a series of revivals across the colonies, later known as the Great Awakening, that were less a coordinated movement than local events committed to a religion of the heart, or a more emotional and personal Christianity. The 18th century revival affected religion across the world. For Islam, Wahhabism called for a return to earlier practices, and Hasidic Jews in Eastern Europe emphasized faith and religious joy in opposition to what they considered an overly academic, study based conventional Judaism. In Western Europe, Methodism and other forms of enthusiastic religion flourished. Like other intellectual currents, the Great Awakening was transatlantic in nature. Ministers such as the Massachusetts Congregationalist Jonathan Edwards pioneered an emotional form of preaching, portraying men in his sermon, sinners in the hands of an angry God, as a sinner on the verge of being condemned to damnation at any moment. Only by experiencing a new birth could one be saved. Particularly important to spreading the revivals was the English minister George Whitefield, it's spelled Whitefield, pronounced Whitfield, who spread the Great Awakening through the colonies during a 2-year tour of America starting in 1739. Newspapers promoted his tour, and tens of thousands flocked to hear him in what was the first major intercolonial event in North American history. Many members of the established churches criticized the revivalists for their lack of theological training, emotionalism, and the disorder they caused. But the Great Awakening transformed the religious life of America, splitting the old light, traditionalist churches, and causing new light or revivalist groups such as the Baptist, Methodist, and Presbyterians to emerge. The awakening was, to a great extent, supported by the poor and disenfranchised, and by the time it subsided in the 1760s, it had already caused many people to question other authorities and institutions in colonial America. The revivals were primarily a spiritual matter, but they reflected existing social tensions, mostly attracting men and women of modest means. Concretely emphasizing salvation rather than profit, ministers often challenged the commercially driven structure of colonial society. New Light ministers in New England criticized the greed of merchants who lured people into debt. In the South, Baptists and Methodists warned against the worldliness of wealthy planters, attacking gambling, horse racing, and lavish entertainment on the Sabbath as sinful practices. Some preachers explicitly denounced slavery, and while most slaveholders reconciled the institution with Christianity to themselves, and a few, such as the grandson of Robert King Carter, emancipated their enslaved people after concluding that blacks and whites were brothers in Christ. More often, especially in the Chesapeake, the revivals Christianized enslaved people, contributing to an important aspect of the development of African American culture. Some blacks and women began preaching as well, shattering the white male monopoly on the practice. Overall, the revivals broadened the religious alternatives available to colonists, further subdividing society but simultaneously integrating it further into transatlantic religious developments. The Great Awakening spawned publication wars, expanded the circulation of print materials, and led people to develop and follow their own views over those of elites. Self-educated preachers engaged in intense religious discussions, and colonists asserted their rights to individual judgment. Though spiritual salvation was the objective rather than social or political revolution, the independent mindset encouraged by the revivals would have significant political consequences. And on the left, you can see George Whitefield. His detractors called him Dr. Squintums because he had some eye issues, as you can see from the painting. So that's the end of section 5.